Hello. Hope everyone is well. Happy almost New Year. Change the angle just a little bit. It's a little wonky. All right. Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. I wear the Tathagata's teaching, freeing all creations. Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. I wear the Tathagata's teaching, freeing all creations. Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. I wear the Tathagata's teaching, freeing all creations. All evil karma ever committed by me since of old, on account of my beginningless greed, anger, and ignorance, born of my body, mouth, and thought, now I atone for it all. All evil karma ever committed by me since of old, on account of my beginningless greed, anger, and ignorance, born of my body, mouth, and thought, now I atone for it all. All evil karma ever committed by me since of old, on account of my beginningless greed, anger, and ignorance, born of my body, mouth, and thought, now I atone for it all. Fragrance of this incense invites the awakened mind to be present with us now. The fragrance of this incense fills our room, protects and guards our minds from wrong thinking. The fragrance of this incense unites us with precepts, concentration, and insight. We offer it for all beings. Homage to the Buddha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. I go to the Buddha for guidance. I shall become one with the Buddha. I resolve that I shall each day follow the way of life he laid down for us to walk and awaken to his supreme wisdom. I go to the Dharma for guidance. I shall become one with the Dharma. The gates of Dharma are manifold. I vow to enter them all. The goal of wisdom is ever beyond. I shall attain it. I go to the Sangha for guidance. I shall become one with the Sangha. In the spirit of universal fellowship and as a member of the Sangha, I pledge myself to strive for the enlightenment of all beings. The Metta Sutta. This is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, unburdened with duties and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm and wise and skillful, not proud and demanding in nature. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove. Wishing in gladness and in safety, may all beings be at ease. Whatever living beings they may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short, or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born, may all beings be at ease. Let none deceive another or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another. Even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child, so with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings, radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upward to the skies, downward to the depths, outward and unbounded, freed from hatred and ill will, whether standing or walking, sitting or lying down, free from drowsiness, one should sustain this recollection. This is said to be the sublime abiding. By not holding to fixed views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being freed from all sense desires, is not born again into the world of suffering. May I be happy and well. May no harm come to me. May I learn compassion. May all my friends, family, and those I love be happy and well. May no harm come to them. May they learn compassion. May all those troubled in body, mind, and spirit be happy and well. May no harm come to them. May they learn compassion. May all those who have hurt me in body, mind, and spirit be happy and well. May no harm come to them. May they learn compassion. May all those I have hurt in body, mind, and spirit be happy and well. May no harm come to them. May they learn compassion. May all my enemies be happy and well. May no harm come to them. May they learn compassion. May all living beings be happy and well. May no harm come to them. May they learn compassion. Okay, we'll meditate. We're going to meditate on the Brahma Viharas, all four of them. So get into your usual meditation posture. As the sound of the bell fades, just take a few deep breaths. And let your breath just settle into a comfortable rhythm. And let these phrases just emerge with your breath from your heart as you exhale. Thinking silently to yourself, may I be happy. And recognizing that this means right now, one breath at a time, opening up to that happiness that comes from within in this moment. May I be free from animosity. And if any anger or ill will of any kind arises while we're meditating, just set that aside. Give yourself the freedom from ill will toward others. May I be free from stress and affliction. So whatever comes into the attention, just let it be or let it pass. There's no need to push anything away, no need to hold on to anything, add to any storylines. Thoughts can come and go. Sensations and things like that, just accept them. And if we don't nurture stress, we don't create affliction. May I look after myself with ease. And just watching the mind, bringing it back to the center, back to my object of meditation, calmly, compassionately. And if there's someone that you'd like to send goodwill toward at this time, do that. Maybe a loved one that you've been thinking about, or a friend, maybe somebody who's going through a difficulty, or someone that you're annoyed with. May they be happy. May they be well. Wishing for them that same happiness that you feel now. May all beings be happy. May all beings be free from animosity. May all beings be free from stress and affliction. May all beings look after themselves with ease. May all beings be free from suffering. And if there's anyone you need to generate compassion for at this time, anyone that comes to mind who's dealing with some stress or difficulties, wish them freedom from suffering. And recognize that yourself and all beings experience these same kinds of things. So we extend that compassion unselfishly to all beings, even the ones that shoot off firecrackers while we're trying to meditate. May all beings enjoy their good fortune. May all beings appreciate their blessings. And if there's someone that you know who's had good fortune, enjoy that with them. Recognize it as a blessing. Wish them well with it. And be aware of your own blessings, those things we have to be grateful for. Blessings and misfortune all arise due to causes and conditions. They arise due to actions. We all own our karma. We own the results of our actions. I am the owner of my karma, heir to my karma. Born of karma, I'm related to all other beings by karma. I live supported by karma. Whatever actions I do, good or evil, I will inherit the results. All beings are the owners of their karma. Heirs to their karma. All beings are born of karma, related by karma. All beings live supported by karma. Whatever they do, good or evil, they will inherit the results. And take a moment now just to sit with the breath. Buddha nature pervades the whole universe, existing right here now, and offering flowers, candles, and incense, hearing the Dharma and training the mind, great merit is attained. We dedicate this merit to the great Master Shakyamuni Buddha, the all-pervading and everlasting three treasures, to the 16 guardians and all protectors of the Dharma and their relations throughout space and time, to all ancestors of the Sangha and all beings in the Dharma world. May penetrating light dispel the darkness of ignorance, so that all karma be resolved in the mind flower bloom in eternal spring. May the Dharma body maintain strength and health, and years of life be lengthened for all teachers of this Sangha. May their vows be fully realized. May they live in perfect peace with Buddha Dharma. We pray for those suffering from violence and those who grieve for them, for those living in oppression, for all who are imprisoned who should be free, for all refugees from violence, hunger, and catastrophe, man-made or natural. We pray for the health and well-being of those suffering from diseases of body, mind, or spirit, all those working toward the healing of those afflictions. We pray for those suffering from COVID-19, those working to protect and treat them, and to those grieving for those lost to this pandemic. May they be serene through all their troubles, and may we realize the enlightened way together. Sabe sata sadahantu avera sukha jivino katang punya phalang maham sabe bhagi bhavantu te. May all beings always live happily, free from animosity. May all share in the blessings that spring from the good we have done. Nice to see so many of you here on New Year's Eve. Hope you all have plans to stay safe and sound on the auspicious night. So I'm going to talk about something tonight that I have never given a Dharma talk about before. Um, that is kind of rare that I, because I've given a lot of Dharma talks lately, and to find something that I haven't talked about before is unusual. Now I've talked about it, but I haven't given a talk on it. Usually this comes up in one-on-one conversations or in maybe sometimes questions and answers during services and that kind of thing. Um, but I got this email this week, and today I headed down to Orlando to visit with Dr. Chow and get a cortisone shot in my knee because it's not getting better. And so on the way down, I was thinking about this email and this correspondence that I had. It was actually started with one email and ended up being 4 or 5 back and forth. And I thought, this is a good topic. I should talk about this. Um, so to consider tonight kind of a first whack at it, I'm sure that questions will come up and I'll think of things I should have said. And I'll probably digress from my outline because I did it fairly hastily. But here's what's going on. So once in a while, I get a question from people who are trying to explain their interest in Buddhism or their connection to Buddhism to a family member or members. And often the family members are of a different religion, usually Christian, because the US is still predominantly Christian. And the family members are not supportive of this spiritual exploration and may even be very hostile toward it and may even be very rejecting toward the person because of this interest in Buddhism. And so I don't talk about this much publicly because of a few reasons that are probably kind of good reasons. For one thing, um, I encounter frequently this sort of Christian hegemony, this idea that if you're American, you must be Christian. And really, increasingly, that's not true. But I find myself even during holiday season, especially, in a room full of people who are assumed to be culturally Christian or that their families are Christian or whatever. And because, the idea is that if you're American, you must be a Christian or you grew up in a Christian household or whatever. And that's changing. And also, I'm around a lot of Asians. And so, I can't make that assumption about them. But also, the landscape is changing. The religious landscape is changing, and this is probably why I get this coming up more often than I used to. So there's a research organization, the Pew Research Center, and they do a religious landscape survey every day, at least every decade. And I think it's a little bit more often than that, but I'm not sure. Anyway, the last one was in 2014. And what they do is they survey tons and tons of people and ask them about their religious identities. And in the last one, Christians accounted for about 71% of Americans. So they are far and away the majority. Shouldn't surprise any of you. But what might surprise you is that falls every year or every time they do the survey. And about 6% of the Americans surveyed were of non-Christian faiths. So that's Buddhist, Jewish, Muslim, etc. Non-Christian faiths. Okay, emphasis on the word faith. So faith traditions. But the fastest growing group in the religious landscape study this time were the nuns. They described them as the nuns. Those are people who don't identify with any particular religion. And so it was almost 23%, which includes atheists and agnostics, which was a relatively small percentage of that, but about 16% of Americans fell into this sort of nothing in particular category. I don't identify as any particular religion. And the nuns, the overall nuns, that 23%, outnumber every other group, specific group, except evangelical Christians. And even there, they're within a couple of percentage points. My bet would be the next time they do, based on the trend that I've seen so far. And the fact that when you break it down by age and demographic, you see that number more and more in younger people. So my guess is that they're gonna outnumber the evangelical Christians probably next time around, if they don't already. So anyway, if you're talking to people who are Christian, or know anything about Christianity, to assume that you're talking to someone who's Christian, or to assume that they know anything about Christianity, is no longer really a safe assumption. So the second thing is, it's very difficult to talk about this without kind of contrasting one faith from another. And I have zero interest in trying to change anyone's mind about their faith. If you're happy in your faith, well, if you're listening to me, you have an interest in Buddhism, and so you're interested in that. But when I speak at a more, sort of general setting, if I'm invited to talk to a group at a church or something like that, my attitude is, if you're happy in your faith, good for you. I'm happy with mine. And if yours is a healthy spirituality with good values and that supports things like good relationships and moral values and things like that, then I think you should stay right where you are. Okay. In fact, the Buddhists, kind of as a rule, not universally, I'm sure nothing is universal, but we tend not to try to convert people. You'll see the term convert Buddhists. In fact, if you read the Pew Research study that I mentioned, you'll probably encounter, if you go to the section on Buddhists, it'll probably say how many of the people they interviewed were convert Buddhists, meaning that they're identifying as Buddhists now after growing up with some other tradition. But that's a little bit inaccurate, because Buddhism doesn't insist, if you're going to join us, that you have to abandon them, right? It's not, you don't have to change from one thing to the other. Just simply say, oh, this is good. I'm going to try this practice. And as far as we're concerned, that's just fine. Now, that may not be just fine with all the other religions, but we're not interested in saying you have to leave that in order to come here. And we Dharma teachers like me tend not to preach. Preaching defined as, telling people what they should do, and you should believe this. In fact, one of my teachers, Koyo Kabase, said frequently, one of his teachers, I can't remember which one, said, once you start preaching the Dharma, you start killing the Dharma. And that's pretty powerful stuff. We don't try to force belief on anyone, or even wheedle, cajole, or convince belief on others. So to contrast Buddhism with other religions comes a little too close to preaching to me. And the Buddha himself didn't disparage other religions. He would have debates with followers of other teachers, certainly. But one of the 5 factors that a teacher should establish in his mind before he teaches is, don't exalt myself or disparage others. So there's no evangelizing. Yes, the Buddha, expanded his base. He talked to a lot of people. There were a lot of people suffering, and he wanted to make his teachings available to them. But he didn't even decide to teach right away. Once he was awakened, he took several days, weeks even, before he decided that, I'm going to try to share this with others. So we don't evangelize. There's a concept, ehipassiko, which means basically come and see for yourself. And so even the Buddha discouraged having blind faith. Don't believe something because I said it. that kind of thing. So, my path, uh, I'm not an expert on Christianity by any means, but I did grow up a Protestant Christian, and I grew away from that. Uh, First, kind of stepped away from the church that I went to, or that my family went to, because the values uh, of that particular sort of strain of Christianity at that time did not align with my values. It was a time of great change in America. There was a war going on. I didn't like the war. The church seemed to think war was a good idea. There was a civil rights movement going on. I thought equal rights was a great idea. The church didn't seem to think so. Tended to want to keep people separate and to sustain and maintain white supremacy, which I thought was a bad idea. I didn't use that term, but you know what I mean, right? So I I decided to stop going to church, but that did not mean that I decided to stop being religious. Um, but I started when I got a little older. So that happened when I was probably about 13 or 14, about 14 probably. And a little bit later, as I got older and as I looked more into studying religions in general and so on, I started wrestling a lot with questions about God and faith. And I was studying social sciences generally at the community college that I went to. And so I was taking all of the religion related courses they had, which weren't very many. And there was a minister, I think he was a Presbyterian minister, who was teaching philosophy 1 and 2, and New Testament and Old Testament. I took all of those courses. And in one of them, and I don't remember which one, I think it was New Testament, he said something one night, quoting a Christian theologian. I think it was a German theologian. I don't remember who it was, but he said, a true Christian would still be a Christian even if God didn't exist. And that was kind of exactly what I needed to hear at that point in my life. It kind of woke me up because I had been struggling a lot with this idea, should I believe in God? I didn't find any reason to, in terms of anything that looked like empirical evidence. And I did not get a lot of comfort from belief in God. And in fact, as I said, the church itself hadn't seemed like a very welcoming place to me. So, so the question then was, well, how important is what you believe in? And if that's not that important, then what is? What is the important thing? And so I thought, so it must be that the important thing is what you do, not what you believe, but what you do. If I found out tomorrow that there's absolutely no God, what would change? Obviously, the belief system has to change, but would I change what I do? And so, I had been praying to whatever God might be out there for guidance quite a bit for a couple of years at least, trying to figure out my way around. And oddly enough, I kept finding resonance with Buddhism. So I said something to somebody once, not too long ago. I said, if God had wanted me to be a Christian, he had plenty of opportunities. But oddly enough, I stopped identifying as Christian, but a lot of the teachings I encountered actually made a lot more sense to me as a Buddhist than they did as a Christian. So, I mentioned to the person that I've been emailing with that I was going to talk about this tonight. And so I'm going to do some stuff that some of you have been attending these a lot, probably don't really need. Some of you might find this interesting and might even hear something new here. But, the word the Buddha The Buddha is not a name, it's a title. It was a human being who was a prince in northern India. Siddhartha Gautama was born almost 600 years before Christ. And Gautama recognized that despite his wealth and privilege, that he and his family, his loved ones, were going to experience suffering. And he started wanting to find a way out of that cycle. And he found that there were people who had left home to go and lead a holy life, basically to go and search for a way to transcend, this kind of mundane materiality of humanness, and figure out how to keep coming back to suffering. In India in those days and in these days, and not unlike much of the rest of the world, if you were born, you were going to experience a lot of difficulties. And so he decided he would do this. He would go in this holy search. And so he left his palace and went out and learned meditation and started practicing austerities and so on for 6 years, very diligently, until he became enlightened. And so the Buddha is what he became after his enlightenment. And it simply means the awakened one. He's awakened to the truth. So the practice and the proof, the truth that he awoke to was a practice, which boils down to this: basically, if we're born, we're going to experience suffering. How we experience suffering is a result of how our mind engages with what arises. And there's a way to transcend much of this suffering. And that way is a path that involves living compassionately, training the mind, and developing wisdom. So that's the Four Noble Truths. If you're born, you're going to suffer. There's a cause for the suffering. There's a way to end the suffering or transcend the suffering. And that way to transcend is a path of practice. Even that is more complicated than it needs to be, than you need to understand if you're approaching Buddhism. If you ask a preacher, can you tell me what Christianity is in very few words? If you didn't know anything about Christianity and you met someone who was a minister and said, what is it? And you got 30 seconds, he'd be likely to quote John 3:16. We believe that God so loved the world that he gave his one and only son so that whoever believed in him should not perish but have everlasting life. Okay. Well, Buddhism is not so much a belief system as it is a path of practice. Like I said, this fourth truth is the way out of this, the way to salvation in Buddhism is the eightfold path, the path of practice, doing things. In fact, I was once in a conversation at the Thai temple years ago, and there was a Thai woman there who was some American had said something about Buddhism, and she said, "Don't say Buddhism. It's not a Buddhism. Ism implies beliefs. We say Buddha sasana is Buddha practice." And really, that's very smart. Now, I still say Buddhism because people know what that is. If I walked around saying Buddha sasana, you'd know what I meant. But it is a path of doing. And when the Buddha was asked, in as few words as possible, what is your teaching? He would answer just this: do good, avoid evil, purify the mind. Do good, avoid evil, purify the mind. Now, that's a pretty simple instruction, but of course it's not easy. Just because it's simple doesn't mean it's easy. And so as Buddhism spread from India into China and beyond, it evolved quite a bit and it took on a number of forms. And so at the outset, Buddhism was pretty humanistic. It was founded by a human being who accomplished something that human beings like you and I can accomplish if we just follow his instructions. But and a lot of the Buddhist teachings have actually been affirmed by science, by modern psychology, by neuroscience, things like that. I gave a whole talk about that last Wednesday, by the way. So if you're interested in that and didn't see it, it's still on YouTube. You can find it. Anyway, so Buddhist monks carried the teachings to other cultures. And so as it spread, it evolved. And so now there are actually a lot of different ways to practice Buddhism. Some of them are still quite humanistic. Others are pretty theistic. But generally, Buddhism still doesn't require any sort of conversion. You can practice Buddhism without abandoning another religion. You will inevitably let go of some things if you take your practice seriously, but those are the things that are standing in the way of your deeper relationship to your life and to your world and to the divine. So, you can, as far as we're concerned, you can be a Christian Buddhist or a Jewish Buddhist or a Muslim Buddhist or a Hindu Buddhist or a nun Buddhist. We don't care. You know, it's really about what you do. It's not about what you say you believe in or call yourself or any of that stuff. So if you want to remain culturally Christian, because that faith still is still meaningful to you, but you want to practice the sort of deeper contemplative approach to faith, good, we're happy with that. I've had a number of friendships with people who were ministers in other traditions. In fact, one of my favorite people in Volusia County is a Catholic priest, and Father Phil, and I just think he's one of the best human beings I've ever met. And I had a friendship for a while with a Seventh-day Adventist hospital chaplain. He's not still around. I'm not sure what happened to him, but we talked quite a bit for a while, and he was very interested in the Buddhist teachings because he felt that Christianity had a contemplative tradition and had gotten away from it. And he wanted to learn about Buddhist contemplative traditions and see if he could apply it. And we're happy to share that. The only thing I'm not real happy about is sharing, talking about this to some people in the Bright Dawn group, sort of appropriation of Buddhist contemplative practices in order for commercial purposes and to make you better employees and that kind of stuff. I have some real mixed feelings about that. But, it does say that, this is beneficial to you in the short term too. And so these things are good and helpful. So there was, as I said, I think in my case, Buddhist practice really helped me understand other religions better, because even though Christianity stopped resonating with me, and I read a lot of other religions and stuff. I studied comparative religion in school, and I found a lot of truths, but the one that I said, okay, this is my home, was Buddhism. And I didn't set out to become a Buddhist. I think there's this idea that one is called to the ministry and one is called to certain things. Once in a while you encounter this idea, someone will assume that, well, they can just tell you that, that their religion is the true religion, and you'll just go, oh, well, gee, I've been going down the wrong path. I'll just come along with you now. It's not that simple. I suspect, from what I see, that there is this sort of calling thing that happens. There's this sort of, I don't know how any other way of putting it. That's sort of a Christian way of dealing with it, but I think that we find the religion that fits us. And, and from Buddhist terms, you could talk about that in terms of past karma and stuff like that. But the reality is I found my home here. There was one time there was a well-intentioned Christian who was trying to get me back on what he considered to be the right track. And he said I was going down the path to hell as far as he was concerned. And so, look, there's an element of compassion there. Someone's telling you that hey, I want to save you from eternal damnation. And I was like, okay, well, I, I think I've got this figured out, but I appreciate what you're trying to do. But I said, well, really, so my religion is to do good, to avoid evil, and to purify your mind. That's my religion. What part of that do you think is going to lead me to hell? He didn't really know what to say to that because that doesn't conflict with any major religion's teachings. You can be a Christian, Jewish, Buddhist, anything you want to, or Hindu, anything you want to, and do that. In fact, that's almost universal, for people who actually experience some spiritual growth. That's kind of how you do it. And so he didn't have an answer for that, but he fumbled around a little bit about it, and he said something about how I should accept Jesus and that kind of stuff. And I explained to him that I had grown up Christian. And in fact, I was baptized when I was about 13 years old, but for reasons that I mentioned earlier, I felt alienated by the church. And then something occurred to me as I was talking to him that I shared with him. I'm a much better Christian now that I'm a Buddhist than I ever was when I was a Christian. So there are other people who have discovered that, who remained Christian, or who end up sort of doing multi-faith practice. And if you want to try that, that's fine with me. Personally, I have enough trouble being a decent Buddhist, but there are people like Father Robert Kennedy, who's a Jesuit priest. I think he's Jesuit, and a Roshi, a Zen master. Thich Nhat Hanh, Venerable Thich Nhat Hanh, the Vietnamese Zen master, encountered Thomas Merton and also became a Christian too. So there's my friend Paul inmate Jizo Cummins, who's a Zen monk, likes to tell this story, which I think one of his teachers told him, about a priest who met this Japanese guy named Soen Roshi. And I've heard another story about a priest meeting him. I don't know if it's the same priest, but the story I heard is this priest had been to a retreat, meditation retreat with this Japanese Zen master who was kind of an odd guy, but in really endearing ways. And he said at some point he realized during the course of the retreat, when he was having these one-on-one conversations with Soen Roshi, the Zen master, said it suddenly occurred to me that this little Japanese Buddhist guy is trying to make me a better Christian, which he was. And the story that that Paul tells is that this priest was at this several-day session, probably 5-day thing, and you do a lot of meditation, and then one or more times a day, you go and have a one-on-one with the teacher. And so this priest went in and sat down to talk to the teacher. And so when Roshi asked him, says, what were Jesus's last words? And the priest says, Father, why have you forsaken me? And so when Roshi rang his bell and said no, and rang his bell. And so that's the way these one-on-ones go, and these very formal things. The master rings the bell, and that's your signal to get up and bow and leave. So the priest goes, I wonder what he means by no. So he goes and he thinks about that, thinks about it, goes in the next day and has the one-on-one, and the same thing. The guy says, so what were Jesus's last words? And the priest says, look, I know, I'm very familiar with this. His last words were, Father, why have you forsaken me? And so Roshi goes, no, rings the bell. So this goes on for a few days, and finally, the priest actually goes back, finds his Bible, looks it up, and all of this. He goes, I don't understand what he's looking for. And so finally, he goes in his last day, and he's at his wit's end. He goes, please tell me what it is you're looking for. I know that this is what Jesus said. What is it you want me to say? And I'm not going to do this because I'll scare the dogs, but this little Zen master leans back and opens up his arms and looks up the heavens, and at the top of his lungs yells, Father, why have you forsaken me? time I do that, I get chills because that moment, of feeling the intensity of that, becoming aware of the sacrifice that was being made, for the sake of all beings. God, I'm still chill. It's just always, always really hits me, when I sort of do this. But that's what Soen Roshi wanted him to experience. What the real intensity, the meaning of that. I wanted him to understand what it was to be one with Christ, not just to be a believer in Him, but to be one. So anyway, Father Robert Kennedy, a different priest, wrote this book called Zen Gifts for Christians, and he says that people who are leaning toward a deeper form of prayer are often attracted to studying Zen. And he's a Zen guy. I'm a Zen guy, but I think that other forms of Buddhism you could say this about as well. And he says it's not because they wish to be Buddhist, but because they seek a more contemplative prayer life. In other words, one that really puts you in touch with the deeper, the profound nature of life. And he says, Zen gives us a method to put contemplation into practice. Training does not allow us to analyze or theorize about prayer or life. Instead, it plunges us at the outset into the contemplative act in which there is no subject or object. So, in other words, if you wanted to put that into more or less Christian terms, it gives you an awareness of what you mean when you talk about God that you can't get just from listening to some preacher talk about it or thinking about it or praying or even reading your Bible. There's this famous old thing about theology and theologians arguing about how many angels can dance on the head of a pin. And in Zen, and I would say in Buddhism in general, it transcends that argument. What angel? What pin? What theologist? When you can experience the whole universe dancing, then why get caught up in questions like that? Questions like that are just so much nonsense. When you can experience the dance of living in this place, the miracle of this life. Anyway, so he says, Kennedy points out that Buddhist practices is a way to get insight into oneness, which, as he puts it, and this is a quote, reveals to us our human potential and calls us to use this potential in service of others. It brings us to the present moment. So if you have a child or a family member who is exploring Buddhism, don't worry, it's okay. They're just looking for a deeper way to relate to the world, and to the life that they live in. It's a complicated place. And the answers are not all that obvious. It's understandable that people are fearful, about where their family members are going to end up, and it's even commendable that you care about them that much. But we have to experience our own spiritual life. And if we have different ways of approaching that, and not everybody's going to be satisfied with hearing the stuff that they heard before. Some of us need to find our own way. And so, that's my advice to you. Accept them, be there for them, and hopefully you'll learn from them, just as these priests learned from spending time with this Japanese guy. Hopefully if you stay open enough, you'll end up a better Christian or Muslim or Jew or whatever it is. So anyway, thank you for your time. I hope that this was useful to you all, and I hope that you have a great New Year, safe New Year's Eve, and those of you who meet on Thursdays, I'll see you there on Zoom on Thursday night. And thank you and you're welcome, Jeff. And I thank you for your attention.